Great. Thank you, Kim. Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Liz Crocker. I'm a learning program developer on the learning team at the Royal BC Museum. And I am here today at Willow's Beach, which is in Oak Bay, just outside of Victoria. And I would like to first acknowledge that this beach is on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen speaking people, the Esquimalt First Nations. And I'm just ever so glad to be working, because I know a lot of people aren't working, and especially to be able to work and learn on such a beautiful place. I'm very, very thankful for that. So today our program is RBCM outside. We are trying to bring you a little bit of the outside to you if you can't get out, or maybe you can't get down to the coast. We've got some coast for you today. Usually when the museum's open, I work on the online learning programs, and that includes the learning portal and our distance learning program. So we do programs like this, but usually not from outside. I also work on a field tripper program where we do go outside and in big groups of people, but we can't do that right now. So this is kind of a mesh between the field tripper program and some of our digital field trip programs. So it's kind of exciting to blend those two together. So in the learning portal, if you haven't been to the learning portal, easy way to get there is rbcm.ca/LP. And there's all kinds of things on there. This is a great time to be checking out the learning portal. Oh, Kim's putting up a link. And we also have, there's some content on there that actually relates to my special guest today, Heidi Gartner, and I know Kim will be putting that in as well. So in the next program, this outside program is only every 2 Wednesdays, so every second Wednesday, and the next one will be May 20th. And I'm excited to say that I'm going to have Dr. Nancy Turner with me in a couple of weeks. She's a world-renowned ethnobotanist that we're so lucky to have, lives close by. And she's actually almost like an honorary staff person at the Royal BC Museum. She's written some amazing handbooks that you can still get from the Royal BC Museum. So that'll be on Wednesday, May 20th. So look on the website for that information coming up soon. So today, as we mentioned, for those of you who are here early, we're in this webinar format. You can hopefully see and hear us, okay? We can't see and hear you. We can only hear from you through what you type in the chat windows or the Facebook window if you're there. So please do that. We encourage you to do that. And so I am here with Heidi Gartner. We are practicing social distancing, and we also are not mic'd, and we're not mic'd like we weren't mic'd 2 weeks ago either, which would really help with sound. But the mic system that we have, it requires us to share equipment that we're putting in our ears and back and forth between staff, and that is definitely not Dr. Bonnie Henry approved right now. So we're doing this without mics, which is a bit challenging at the beach on a windy day. So right now I'm squatted down low, and we're in a little shelter. That's going to help with the sound. So you will hear as we go up and clamber over the rocks when I try to keep it up with Heidi. You'll hear some wind. I apologize for that. Kim will let us know if it's really bad. We've got some ways that we're going to try and work around that. Okay, I think that was it. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Heidi Gartner, who is the invertebrate collections manager and researcher at the Royal BC Museum. It's a huge job, and she is, on top of that, super passionate about the beach and all things marine without backbones. And so I'm going to turn the camera so we can get Heidi into view, and we're going to stay low for now. There she is. She's squatting down on her. Look at that. She's down.
Hello, everybody.
So I'm going to get Heidi to talk loud. There we go.
How are we? Can we hear me? Good. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Yes, I love exploring the beach, and sharing with you in this format is very weird. So today we have wind, so we're going to stay put for a little bit. It's also high tide. We're getting closer to high tide, so it's not the best time, but if you live near the ocean, we've got a pretty good series happening right now. So if you get out more in the mornings, you're more likely to hit a low tide. And yeah, I'm just going to tell you about some cool animals and about living in the intertidal zone. How's my sound so far? Good? Good. All right. So intertidal zone. If you live by the ocean, or if you don't, you might notice that every day the water changes where it is. It's not like a lake. It doesn't stay put. It moves up and down the shoreline. And there's animals that live within that. So there's a low tide every day, the lowest point it reaches on the beach, and a high tide point. If you can imagine living in a world in between the ocean and the world around us that we know is really strange. These are animals that are used to swimming in cold ocean water, and suddenly they're out in the sun, or they're exposed to air, or they're in the wind like we are today. So I'm just going to tell you about some of the neat animals that live here on this beach and some of the adaptations they have to living in that very strange world. Sound good?
Yeah, and I am so curious, Heidi, to see what you found, and also to see what you look for on the beach. I kind of want to know, what's your eye when you're on a beach? Where's the good places to look? Which I'm sure we'll see as we go along the rocks a little bit.
It's always good to go close to the water line, of course, because a lot of things have a lot more adaptations to being in water, and fewer have adaptations to being out on land. So that's always great. Look under rocks, look in the crevices, look in the places where it still might be moist. You'll be more likely to find animals there. And then a really neat thing about being a marine biologist is that you start to look at like the really small stuff. Like you start paying attention. I'm sure if you just cast your eye across this rock face that we have here, you just see rocks. But to me, I see about 20 different species of animals because I've had my face down and I'm looking at the things that are living in it. So it's pretty neat there. And again, sorry because of our limitations with the wind and stuff today. What I did was I got here a little bit early and went and picked out a few things to show you and just to talk about them. So I'm going to push this closer to Liz and hopefully she can see it.
Yeah, if you just put it in the middle there.
So what we have in there are hermit crabs. Hermit crabs are a group called Anemura, and they have adapted so that they have like a soft belly part that curls up in and around shells. And yes, they can trade shells and go into bigger shells when they get bigger. And what you're seeing there, I think is those two bigger ones aren't super friendly right now. So very neat. These ones are animals that I found by looking in the wet spots. They won't do really well out in the sun for a long time. They can curl up in their shell, but they can't close it the way like a snail can. And so I'm just going to show you. I'm going to pick one up. I'm not sure you can see that there. But this is what a hermit crab looks like when it gets disturbed. It can close its large crab's claws to close this aperture. And so that kind of protects them from when, say, a predator is trying to get at them.
If you just hold it still for a sec, Heidi, I'll try to see if we can get in a little closer. Ooh. There you go.
See how when he's disturbed, it can actually, its claws are kind of shaped to the aperture of the shell. What's also neat is this animal, I can tell what species it is based on the colorations and the patterns on its claws. So that one is called the grainy hand hermit crab, because if you look at it really close, especially if we could have a microscope or put it in your hands, you'd see that there's tiny little blue tubercles all over it. So those are some hermit crabs.
Say the name of it again, Heidi.
Grainy hand hermit crab.
Yeah, I see Kim's got it up on the screen. That's great.
Oh,
great.
Good work, Kim. Just since we just talked about them, I found these snails down at the lower tide. These are called Nucella, is the genus, and I think the common name, I'm sorry, I sometimes forget common names, is dogwinkle. These are very neat
I'm gonna
snails.
Can I grab one? And I'll see if I can get it a little bit closer here, because the shell is
beautiful. And if you flip it over, there's an area called the aperture. And as you can see, snails actually have a large fleshy foot. So when you pull one off immediately, it looks more like this. There's that big white fleshy foot. Do you see that?
Yeah, that's looking pretty good. I hope everybody can see at home. That's looking good on my
end. So
it's
similar to the snails and slugs you see around your garden, that sort of thing. And they move around on this large muscular foot. But on their foot, they have this thing called an operculum. And in the one in Liz's hand, you see it's like a brown trap door. So that closes off the animal if, say, it gets knocked off of a wave, or I actually also have that on a slide if
it's
you're not able to get it.
Yeah, Kim, if you can manage that slide. It's not looking great on my end here.
Oh, okay.
I can't see it. So yeah, you mentioned slugs, Heidi. So slugs and snails, they're related, obviously.
Yes.
But so slugs don't have shells.
No.
So what's up with that?
Yeah, the slugs that we have on land have adapted to be air-breathing animals, and so they have something called a pneumostome. So the next time you look at a snail crawling along, if you look on, I think it's usually the left side of them, they have a tiny little hole in their mantle, and then they use that as almost like a lung to breathe.
Oh, okay. And Kim is successfully showing a slide of the dog winkles now.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and a rock with some barnacles as well.
Yeah, so on the rock, what you're seeing there is you're seeing the white muscular foot. That's what it crawls around on waves of that muscular foot. And then when it picked it up, you can see that trap door slowly closing. And what that protects the snail from is things like predators, or if it were to get out in the hot sun, it could close off all the moisture, especially if they put mucus around the edge, and that can actually help them survive if they're exposed at the high tide.
And they can do that. They can like secrete mucus.
Yes, they secrete.
It's amazing. These are like such extreme adaptations to survive. Hey, it's
amazing.
So cool.
And what's really fascinating, I've heard of studies within the group of the Nucella even, but this happens with most snails, especially in the marine environment, is the shape of that outer shell rim.
Kim, can I get you to stop sharing?
Oh,
sorry, Heidi.
No, that's okay.
Or unless my screen is looking a bit. Oh, I know what I have to do. There we go. Sorry, Kim.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Heidi.
The shape and the ridges and all that sort of thing can be adapted based on what predators these animals have. So if it's like a crab, these like projections and these frills actually make the edge of the shell harder so that the crab can't break it as easily.
Oh.
Yeah. So
that's
different
amazing.
snails have different adaptations for that, and that's actually features that we use to help identify the different species.
Huh.
It's amazing.
Very cool.
Yeah. And if Kim was still sharing the slides, I had one on reproduction. Nucella produces these yellow egg sacs. I'm not sure if she's sharing.
I bet you she's working on it right now.
Yeah. What's really neat is in the spring, you can have reproduction frenzies. And if you see the picture, there's just eggs everywhere, and there's a whole bunch of different, all kinds of things going on there. And what's really weird is that they lay up to like 30 little eggs inside of each egg capsule, but in the end, only like 6 to 8 usually are born. And that's because they're like, basically they eat themselves in the egg capsule.
Oh.
So there's random weird things for you.
She's just got it up on the screen. You're saying that they eat each other in the egg sac. Wow, survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So,
okay, that's a nice image. Thanks for giving Kim
so
that.
that's what you'd find if you were kind of right during peak reproductive season. They are kind of.
I think I've seen that before.
Yeah.
Neat.
So if you ever find those neat weird looking egg capsules, that's what that is.
Yeah.
Now.
Very cool.
What else do I have here? I have some shore crabs and some limpets. So shore crabs are fun to find if you're ever turning over rocks. Of course, you always want to be careful turning over rocks and trying to put animals back where they are. But hey, if you want to get a budding naturalist, take your kids to a beach and collect some rocks and try and find these.
And maybe I like the rule not lifting a rock that's any bigger than your head.
Oh yeah.
And use your 2 hands. Because you don't want to drop it on somebody that's living under there.
I'm gonna pick one up.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll move back.
We have a question here as well from Patricia Woodruff. She said she saw eggs a few weeks ago at low tide. Could they have been from the dogwinkle snail? It was in a rocky intertidal area.
It could have been, yes. So we are at this fantastic time of year where it's spring. Everything's getting more productive, right? And that includes the ocean. So a lot of things time their reproduction to when we're getting more plankton, more sun, more everything. So it's very possible, and especially if they were that yellowish color and that was lots of little shapes. There could be other things as well. So for example, a lot of snails and a lot of other like nudibranchs are laying their eggs right now. And so it kind of depended on the shape and the coloring and the mucousy net that you've cast over the rock that will tell you which one it is. But if it was yellow, low tide, very good chance. Yeah.
Neat. Thanks, Patricia.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this might be difficult with our social distancing, but these are shore crabs. They're usually kind of square body shape. You find them when you flip over rocks at high tide. One of the neat things is that I can tell which species it is by looking at the legs. This one has hair on its legs. I doubt you'll be able to say that at
No,
home.
I think you can get a little bit. I hope.
Yeah,
that's
so
not
that
bad.
makes up the hairy shore crab. And then if it doesn't have hairs on its legs, it's the naked shore crab.
Okay. And are
These are the hairy ones.
Are
So
they native
Yeah.
to BC?
these are native to BC, and they have quite the amount of color variation. As you can see here, we've got a red one and a green one.
So color's not a good indicator.
It is for some species, but not for these shore crabs. No.
Oh, they're very active.
Yeah, and you can also tell with crabs whether something's male or female. So this one is a female, and how you tell that is when you look at the undersides of them. If it makes a big round U, that is its where it would brood its babies, and so that's a female. And then a male's, I don't even know if I have a male in here. Oh, I do. It's more of like a pointed bee for their reproductive organs.
Oh, and there goes an airplane.
All right.
Thanks, Heidi.
Yeah. Now, I don't know how we're doing time-wise.
It's only 1:15, so if you can show us things for about another 5 minutes or so, and then we can take some questions. And I know we want to try to scramble over the rocks, but
Yeah.
we're good. We've got some time here.
Okay. When you're looking at rocks sometimes, there's sometimes things like that look like this. They almost look like projections on the rock, like little tiny hats, little tubercles. And these are called limpets. They're closely related to snails, but their shell doesn't coil. It's just a hat shape. And what I like to do is I like to show them, because this shows how big the muscular foot is on things like snails and slugs and that sort of thing. And these limpets, it fills up the entire circular shape of it. Hope you're getting that.
Yeah, that's
And
not bad.
Right at the top there's a little mouth and two little like tentacles, we'll call them. And
I don't know. We can't see that. That's
okay.
too bad.
That's probably too close. But
Yeah, and I know when I've done that with slugs, where you put them on a glass plate, and then you can watch their foot ripple, the movement of it. So I bet you could do the same with limpets.
Limpets are a perfect example of that. They can move around by doing this ripple effect on this large muscular foot. But what's really nice about them is they can also use that large muscular foot to hold on. And so they're really good at adapted into like this wave crashing kind of area that we have here, because what they do is they almost like make a plunger with that muscle. So they squish down the outsides, they pull up the middle of the muscle, and it makes almost like a suction cup. And so they're actually really hard to get up rocks if you're not quick and if you don't have the right tools. And it helps them survive in this kind of habitat where there's waves and crash and fall. And some research has actually indicated some of the species that we have here, that we have in BC, they have like a home circle. So they like to go out and feed, and I'll tell you how they feed. But they actually have a little spot they like to return to, apparently, and it's usually kind of divoted out to fit their shell. And what they do is they do that suction cup, produce a little mucus, and they can be out in sunlight for hours and still be moist and doing really well. So that's fascinating.
That is. I did not know that.
Yeah.
I think I saw a question go across. Kim, do it. Yeah.
Sorry, were we just talking about barnacles?
Limpets.
Limpets. Okay, thank you.
Is there a barnacle question? Because there's one. I think those are coming up.
I have a barnacle slide. No, the question here for Braxton, for Heidi, is when did you know you wanted to be a biologist?
Oh, wow. I'm very strange in that I actually grew up in Ontario, not here in BC. And I fell in love with the ocean through an educational series. And I thought I was going to grow up and study whales. And then I moved out here for university and I found out about invertebrates. And I was like, what? Oh my gosh, there's so much diversity. You can play on beaches. And it was just fantastic. And I fell in love then. So I'd say I figured out I wanted to be a biologist or related to animals or marine kind of around grade 5. But then I didn't find out what I was until I was in the university. Sometimes you find out strange things along the way.
Exactly. It's often a path like that, isn't it? So little clues, and you follow that, and then you find something else, and then so neat.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Braxton. Okay.
This last thing about limpets, very cool. They're algae eaters and kind of like diatoms, but they lick rock. So they actually lick rock as they're living. That's how they eat. And they have a specialized tongue that is hardened. And if you look at it under a microscope, it looks like jagged jaws and all that. And it can, anyway, it's very cool for scraping the rocks.
Huh.
So we're going to start trying to explore. We're going to start here. It's nice and close, but we're at really, really high tide line here. And what you're going to see is a bunch of snails. These are called littorines. Littorines are tiny little black snails. They're
Are those buckets okay there, Heidi? We'll come back to those, or?
Yeah, we can come back to them.
Okay.
High enough tide.
The tide is coming in. That's why I was laughing, because I was thinking, how the heck are we going to get out of here? But that's okay. There's a path.
We'll find out. We'll find out.
Oh, and I see Jesse's asked, did we find any red rock crabs? I don't think you did,
we
eh?
didn't, because we didn't come at a super low tide, but there are red rock crabs here at this beach, and I have found them before. So, good question.
I'll try to go out into your shadow. You
Yeah,
tell me. Yeah, I just don't want to drop the camera in the tide pool. That would be bad.
No, I can do basically just all these little black dots are actually tiny little snails called littorines, and they're super well adapted to this like high saline, warm water. And some of them are actually so well adapted to breathing air that they'll choose to come out of water or like migrate out of the water as opposed to being into it, because they're just so used to not being constantly submerged in the water. So they're super well adapted to this high tide line. So if you're ever at a super high tide line, look for this. So we're going to go for a little walk. It's going to get noisy. There's going to be a point where I'm going to point out to Liz the aggregating anemone. I'm not going to stop there though. It's not the safest walking path, so we're just going to pause and look, and I won't talk there. But what's really neat about them is they're also adapted to this life in the intertidal zone. So they're bright green color, and they're partly bright green because they have symbiotic algae living in them. Do you all remember what photosynthesis is? It's when you take the sun's energy and you produce carbon and oxygen from using up, the sun's energy. And so it's living in the anemones, and they do this for the anemones when they're exposed at in the intertidal zone.
What did you call it? Symbiotic
algae.
Symbiotic algae.
Yeah,
Love
living
it.
in this. So I'll just point them out. They're a beautiful color, and then we'll keep walking to a tide pool. If the sound's horrible, Kim's going to give us a signal, and we'll leave, and we'll just take a quick look at the tide pool, and I'll come tell you what we saw after.
Yeah, and if it's really bad, I can turn off the mic while we're looking at the tide pool. Okay, I'm going to attempt to follow Heidi very carefully. Those of you who joined early know that I have a hole in one of my boots, and I already have a soak. So we're going to try to avoid. Okay, now I'm sure it's super great to. I'm going to turn off the mic and go close and then follow Heidi.
I'll share a slide with folks so you can see the aggregating anemone a little closer. Liz, your microphone is muted. You may want it to be muted, but if Heidi's talking to us, we don't hear you right now.
Thanks, Kim. I knew it. I was trying to get down low because I'm in the way. I'm exposed now. How is that sound?
That's better. Sorry, that's better, Liz. Oh, it just got bad again.
Yeah. Okay, hang on. I have another spot. And we're looking at. We'll try it here. Do you see anything here?
How's the sound there, Kim? Can you hear me?
If you speak loudly, but it's pretty loud. It's
Okay. There was just a little amphipod that was swimming around here. It was over here. I'll see if I can disturb it out. Not really coming. All right, so you can see these are those anemones we were talking about. This is what they look like when they're submerged. They got their tentacles out. They can do their feeding. And then when they're out of water, then you get the pictures that you have it on the slide where they've all crumpled up with the algae doing the work for them. And sometimes they even further protect themselves by putting sand on them, like one of the images in that slide. I also have one on shellfish.
Yep, it's just calmed down now.
Okay. So these black things here are mussels or bivalves. There's some over here near Liz there that are in the sun. These are animals that are just basically two valves held together with some really strong muscles, and they're filter feeders. So if you ever heard of red tide and why not to eat bivalves, the difference between them and say shrimp is when you eat shrimp, you're just eating the muscle that is working for the animal, so like the tail. But when you eat mussels, you eat their entire body, including what they do is they open up underwater and they filter water in through one siphon, and they filter out any sort of other food, and then they shoot it out the other. And so sometimes there's this plankton that gets really abundant and that they filter out that gets stuck in their body, and it's all through their body. And when we eat that, it's toxic to us. And so that's why you can sometimes not eat bivalves, but you can eat things like shrimp, no problem. And then last but not least, all of these little bumps here are barnacles. Some people don't realize that these are animals. These are closely related, believe it or not, to crabs and shrimp and those sorts of animals. So when they open up underwater, they're what would have been the crab legs, or the adaptation or equivalent of crab legs, can feed by opening up into the water column and grabbing food particles out like that.
And Kim's showing your picture now,
Oh,
Heidi, which is
perfect.
great. And she's expertly showing the little feathery feet there.
Oh, thanks, Kim.
Nice.
What an assistant. Oh,
Um,
here's amplified.
okay.
I didn't get it.
Oh, it's all right. She's still sharing her screen. We almost had, what was it, an amphipod?
Yes. Okay.
Now, I wonder if we should make our way back to our secluded area, our protected area to finish up over there, or maybe there's an... Yeah, I think I'm going to follow you back over there, okay, Heidi? Can you lead me back over? We'll try not to fall again, and then it's just a lot less windy there. Oh. Found something. Yeah. I'm going to turn my mic off just to show this because I can tell you. Phew. Okay, sorry everybody for muting, but it was so windy. I think it was going to be pretty loud for you. So we're just back where we started from, where we're protected from the wind. I saw someone ask Heidi a question about, did she find any sculpins? Heidi, I didn't see any in the buckets. I'm guessing no.
No, I came back yesterday, or came here yesterday at a little bit better of the tide cycle, and I saw some sculpins then. So it was just really high tide, and actually because it's windy, the waves were making the water really murky when I was down at the water's edge, so I was having troubles finding things today to show you. But yes, you would find sculpins here, and those are a fun feature of tide pools.
Yeah, so
But
Kim,
that does
sorry.
highlight, actually, we are probably going to do this again or something similar at World Oceans Week. And we'll have a bit more flexibility with the timing. We're going to try and time it a bit better with the tide. So keep your eyes open for that.
Yeah, thanks for remembering that, Heidi.
Yeah.
That's going to be the week of Oceans Week, Kim, is June 7th to 14th, I think, something like that.
That is correct.
Yeah, so are there any questions for Heidi while we have a few minutes or a couple minutes?
I can just babble about ocean things.
She's very good at babbling. Kim's just putting up the dates of Ocean Week, which is
Okay.
yeah. Kim, any questions from the window that I didn't see there?
I don't see anything. No.
No.
All right, I'll tell you about barnacles and penises, which is just going to get everyone riveted. So when you saw the barnacles there, you saw a whole bunch of little animals stuck together in a rock. They can't move. They have this life cycle where, yes, they live in the water column when they're babies, but when they settle, they sit, they're stuck for life. What's really neat about barnacles is they're hermaphrodites. They're both male and female at the same time. But how do you find a mate if you can't move around? Well, what they have is they actually have the longest penis to body ratio of any animal in the world. So what they do is they have this long, flexible penis, and it can feel around the other barnacles to see who's also receptive right at the same time. And because they're hermaphrodites, they can actually cross-find, like find and mate with the other one. I'm trying to think of the most appropriate way to say that. So there's something you wouldn't think of. And if you were thinking about a human, it'd be thinking about having like 2 double-decker buses in front of you. So
that is quite the adaptation. Wow.
Yeah, so there, reproduction, sex cells. Random things you probably didn't know about the beach.
Thanks for that, Heidi. Sea biologist, you have so much going on in your head there.
Oh, yes.
There is a question here regarding barnacles. The question is, are we hurting the barnacles or other creatures at all if we are exploring on the rocks?
That's a really good question. And yes and no. Things like barnacles and mussels, as you saw, they have really hard, rigid shells. They close up really tight at the high tide. Unless you're like jumping up and down and trying to break them, most of the times you aren't actually breaking the shell and hurting them at all. They have no sensory features in those outer shells. The things like the anemones and stuff like that, the soft bodies, if you start squishing them and poking them, you're probably disturbing them and bugging them a lot more. So again, if you're walking in the rocky intertidal and you're stepping on the occasional barnacle and mussel, it's not a big deal. But if you see like a crab and you purposely step on it, yeah, it's not a good idea.
So there's probably have time for maybe 2 more questions, Kim?
Sure. First question from Jessie is, Heidi, have you ever seen an octopus?
I have, in person, which is amazing because I'm not, I do scuba dive, but not a lot. And I've seen lots on videos, of course. But one really good low tide, I met one in person. And what happened was I was looking for my animals and I was lifting up an algae. And I saw what was the octopus tentacle, but to me it looked like a sea cucumber. I was just like, oh, that's a really weird sea cucumber, because my brain wasn't working. And I picked it up and there was an octopus. And of course, my brain panicked and I went, oh my gosh, I have to get a picture. And I dropped the octopus to grab my camera. And it took off really quick. But I have to tell you, they're the most fascinating animals, I think. And they're super smart. And their body is incredible. They can do amazing texture and color pattern changes. So if you ever want to get bored, YouTube things like octopuses opening jars or doing mazes, or even their natural habitat, how they can use tools. And anyway, very cool animals.
Extraordinary.
Yeah.
And finally for Mark, are there any gooey ducks there on Willow's Beach?
Ooh. Not that I know of, but I have to admit that I don't know so yes, we're exploring today the like more rocky shore, and Willow's Beach has a gorgeous long sandy beach as well. And I've never specifically been digging here myself, but gooey duck are usually quite deep. They're not usually one of the intertidal ones. So if you were just on the beach here digging and you saw the 2 holes, the siphon shell, like of the siphon of bivalves, the chances of it being a gooey duck are not as great, but there are other really big, cool bivalves that it could be. So for example, butter clams or giant horse clams. Horse clams are more common in kind of like the intertidal zone. But yeah, that's a neat question. You could find things at low tide here with digging. So if you find some cool holes in the sand, go ahead, dig.
Thanks, Heidi. Okay, I think we're going to stop there, Kim. So we're at time, I think. And what I'm going to do is turn camera around. Hang on. So I've got Heidi in the background there. There you are, Heidi. And we'll wave goodbye to you.
Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for joining us. And we'll hopefully see you in a couple of weeks, May 20th. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you. Stay well. Stay safe. Bye-bye.